Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord. Welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we've got 3 new cards to talk about: a new Produce SSR for Tenka, Support SSR for Mamimi, and Produce SR for Nichika. Sorry for not being able to make the video for last banner, and the rerun banners as well. I've been having some computer issues, but hopefully by the time the next video rolls around, everything will be squared away. So thank you for your patience. I have a link to the presentation in this video, as well as in the previous video with Fuyiko 4, if you wanted to see my thoughts on those previous banners. Starting things off, we have Tenka. Serving as a memory gauge bot for Vocal and Dance Alstroemeria, Tenka 6 arrives to also complete the series for Alstroemeria. Truth be told, I think my immediate issue with this Tenka is that she in reality only has one job. Her healing is decent when looked at over time, but really only serves to let her use her 2-star passive and pass as an Alstroemeria card. I don't really understand why she has an additional dance visual combined uncap. Her memory appeal is a mostly fine design, focusing more on the dance side of things, and leans towards Tenka wanting to be a 4-star to reap the most benefits. And having access to plus 30 and plus 40% memory gauge boosts respectively between her 2 appeals is great to have, but taking time to link solely for memory gauge might be too little too late depending on the fest you're participating in. Tenka 2 is also still more or less better than 6 in dance, meaning most of this doesn't matter in the context of Vocal. Her roles are healer, memory gauge booster, as well as a possible center, and I moderately recommend pulling for Tenka. She is permanent, so she'll be around for a long time. Tenka's initial skill is a Vocal 3.0 appeal that raises your memory gauge by 10% and applies a 5% mental regen for 3 turns. This links into a 20% memory gauge boost. The max version of this skill is a Dance 4.0 appeal that raises your memory gauge by 20%, applies a mental 5% regen for 4 turns, and links into a memory gauge 20% boost. Her 1-star passive is a memory gauge 20% up that requires the full Alstroemeria lineup. This means that Amana and Chiyuki have to be performing alongside Tenka on the stage for this passive to be live. It has a 30% chance to activate once. Tenka actually has 2 passives when she reaches 2 stars. The first is a Vocal Dance 50% up that requires an active regen buff, and has a 20% chance to activate twice. The second is a mental 10% heal that requires the turn count to be 2 or later. This has a 30% chance to activate twice, and it also has a plus 50 Vocal uncap. At 3 stars, she unlocks a Dance Visual plus 100 uncap, and at 4 stars, a Dance plus 150 uncap. The memory appeal, once maxed out, is a Dance 2.0 appeal that scales based on how high your mental is, into an additional Dance 2.0 as the Link appeal that also scales based on how high your mental is. For the support recommendations, Vocal, SP, Mental, and Uncap. It's pretty safe to say that Vocal supports are incredibly stacked nowadays, so you aren't necessarily short of options. The Jury appeal is very powerful, while the Alstroemeria synergy of Spencer, Amana, and Summer Chiyuki is fantastic. Now, for dance supports, the big change from the Tenka 2 rerun to now is that Amana has a fairly new limited support that absolutely helps Tenka out in the dance department. Much like before, cards like Asahi and Natsuha help generate lots of SP and have good passives too. For the team recommendations, first we have an arguably worse version of Dance Alstroemeria. While Tenka 2 is not exactly a fresh card, what she provides compared to Tenka 6 is pretty important. You're ideally getting to use Tenka's appeal by turn 2 or 3 for either the 20% or 40% memory gauge boost respectively, and hoping your passive activate for the Chiyuki memory appeal. So yeah, it more or less does just depend on if you're going for the Link appeal or not, but the healing is also nice. Passive activation will help Chiyuki's memory appeal a lot. Now, we have the Vocal version with Vocal Alstroemeria. This is probably the better home for Tenka 6, as she pairs up very well with Amana 6. With both cards boosting your memory gauge a significant amount per turn, setting up 2 or even possibly 3 memory appeals is tangible. Maybe not the most consistent, but it's definitely there. Consider some AoE utility cards for damage on this team, which there are plenty of for Vocal. Overall, Tenka as a center earns anywhere from a B to an A. My stance on memory appeals has changed as we progress through Shiny. I think Tenka's memory appeal is good if you're in lower grades, as buffing memory appeals have a little less payoff as you may not get to Link appeal as regularly. As you climb up the grades, Tenka's power may dwindle a little solely because buffs do outweigh pure damage once you get to that point. Always assess with each season if you're actually reaching your full memory appeal or not, and see if Tenka's feels a little better than, say, a buff into an appeal. As a unit, Tenka earns anywhere from a B+ to an A-. I would say Tenka is so-so. Her damage is nothing special, and the buffing potential completely hinges on the relax/regen buff being active. which is not something every Alstroemeria card provides in a consistent way. She is great as a memory gauge battery once things are up and running, but that's all she really does. It definitely fits vocal Alstroemeria, but it isn't exactly an awe-inspiring card. Still nice to have as a permanent, at least. Next we have our support, Mamimi. Let's take a moment to acknowledge that this is Mamimi's first non-limited, non-event support since February 2019. This by itself is enough reason to celebrate. Being a pure visual support, Soba Mamimi has to compete with Hot Pot Mamimi. Why are they both food related? And there is some give and take for sure. This Mamimi trades out plus 10 SP on her mastery for plus 8 visual mastery, but also comes with better passives for visual Nichika. The scaling appeal helps in produce runs for sure, so it really does depend on how many copies you have of this Mamimi versus Hot Pot. If you've just recently started and you get this card a fair number of times on pickup, she'll feel a lot better than Hot Pot until things start to even out. So it does depend. I think Hot Pot is better for more evergreen teams, whereas this Mamimi is much better for Nichika. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, and Rest Boost, and she has 3 unique support skills. Visual Mastery SP reaching plus 6 at level 75, Visual Mastery Visual reaching plus 8 at level 75, and Visual Mastery Stamina reaching plus 6 at level 80. Her support appeal does scale in kind of a weird way. It starts out as a visual 2.5, but at level 60 it becomes a visual 2.8 that decreases your attention by 10% for 3 turns. It works its way up to a visual 2.7 by level 70 or so, sticks around there for a while, and by level 80 it becomes a visual 2.8 appeal that reduces your attention by 30% for 3 turns. Her TFD idea is vocal, her insight token for grad is visual, and her proficiencies and landing point are for vocal and visual. Mamimi's 1-star passive is a visual 30% up that requires you to be in the visual position. This has a 20% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a visual 75% up and attention 20% down that requires your mental to be 49% or lower. This has a 30% chance of activating once. Her 3-star uncap is a visual plus 100, and her 4-star appeal is a visual maximum 4.5 that scales based on how low your attention is, and also lowers your attention by 10% for 3 turns. Her event passive is a visual 30% up that requires the turn count to be 2 or later, and this has a 20% chance to activate twice. Mamimi earns anywhere from a B+ to an S-. I think it's fair to say that this new Mamimi is good, but she's particularly situational when compared to her predecessor. She's certainly a big upgrade for attention down / revenge focused visual Nichika, but might feel harder to use in general visuals teams. If you already have a few copies of Hot Pot, hold off on using this Mamimi until she's caught up. I moderately to highly recommend this Mamimi depending on the types of teams you build. Moderately if you're just doing pure visual, highly if you use visual Nichika. She is a permanent card, so you may find her again in the future. Lastly, we have our event SR, Nichika. Our latest Fest event PSR is Nichika, who acts as a very basic version of the first SSR Nichika. The main thing you'll notice is that she appeals using both dance and visual at the same time, so dual stat builds will be mandatory for her. She only functions as intended once she reaches 4 stars, where her secondary appeal can now boost Mikoto's appeals by 0.5. This is a good buff, don't get me wrong, but leaves her incredibly lacking in almost every other department. The main reason you're trudging through Fest is to get this costume unlocked for other Nichika cards. Since this Nichika lacks any of the unique team composition passives, and only one of her appeals can buff Mikoto, her utility and overall commitment to the Shi's playstyle is very low. You would need both Mikoto buffs from SSR1 to make this Nichika feel like a complete card, but that might be a lot of effort for not a whole lot of payoff. Her roles are a Mikoto buffer as well as having dual appeals, and you might as well farm for Nichika while she's here. Nichika's initial skill is a visual 1.5 appeal that follows up with a dance 0.5 appeal. This links into a visual 1.0. At max, she unlocks a dance 2.0 appeal that follows up with a visual 1.5 appeal, and increases Mikoto's next appeal by 0.5 for 3 turns. This links into a dance 1.0 appeal. Nichika's 1-star passive is a visual 12% up that requires her mental to be 75% or higher. This has a 40% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a dance 24% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or earlier. This has a 40% chance to activate once. At 3 stars, she unlocks a dance plus 50 uncap, and her memory appeal once maxed out is a dance 50% up for 4 turns that links into a combined dance visual 1.0 appeal. For the support recommendations, much like before, finding a mix of different supports will depend a lot on the type of team you're trying to build. You can play it safe with dual stat supports like Illumine or Hokura depending. The alternatives can be really open-ended currently, so don't really stress too much about it. It's gonna be a little bit before she's get to shine for real, which is sorta true. You can make things work with Nichika too, but we're not talking about her. And just using Mikoto 1 is not necessarily enough, I think, to make that version of She's super valid, so I don't know. Pick your comfy supports, it's gonna be totally fine. Anything to keep the run simple and easy should suffice. Nichika as a center earns anywhere from a C to a B. I actually like Nichika's memory appeal, for what it's worth. It's a decent enough buff into a fairly decent link appeal if you got a fair enough Mikoto buff ahead of time to increase the appeal modifier. Without that buff, it's incredibly whatever, but maybe a more dance-focused She's build could put this memory appeal to use in some way. As a unit, C-. Her passives are more or less a carbon copy of the event Fuyuko PSR not that long ago, and her appeals are frankly really bad if you can't back them up with a Mikoto SSR buff. Even with those buffs, her appeals aren't incredibly threatening, and require some serious work to make them even somewhat respectable. Now, that will do it for the video today. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. Again, I really appreciate your patience with the whole technical issues and all that. I hope to have this all resolved by the next time we have our next shiny review. Still also trying to slowly trudge through a landing point like mini guide. It's tough. There's a lot of things going on in landing point that are very confusing, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm not sure if I want to cover or not, or if I leave that for the bigger guide later, but I don't know. It'll get done eventually, I just don't know when. So next time we're going to talk about the next banner, which we actually know what it will be. It's a new Produce SSR for Madoka, and we're getting a new support SSR for Asahi. They're both visual, they both look really strong, so let's look forward to that banner together. Till next time, I've been Cho, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.